In the pantheon of modern celebrity, no family has ever captured the collective imagination or scrutiny of the American public quite like the Jolie-Pitt clan. To the tabloids, they were the Rainbow Tribe. To cultural critics, they were a walking, talking United Nations experiment. But behind the glossy covers of People magazine and the chaotic paparazzi flashes at LAX, a far more fascinating, quiet social dynamic was taking shape. This is the Jolie-Pitt Siblings Ecosystem. 6 children, split cleanly down the middle. 3 adopted, 3 biological. Maddox, Pax, and Zahara. Shiloh, Knox, and Vivienne. They are a micro-generation raised under the strangest of circumstances, billions of dollars in resources, 2 of the most famous parents on Earth, and a bitter, decade-long divorce that has effectively forced them to choose sides. But as these children transition into adulthood, a fascinating unspoken divide has emerged. How did the contrasting philosophies of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt shape these 2 distinct groups? Is there an invisible line drawn between the adopted and the biological? And how does a child find their own identity when their very existence is viewed by the world as a public relations masterpiece? To understand the present-day war within this family, we have to look at how these 2 distinct halves of the ecosystem were built. Let's begin with the adopted trio. Maddox from Cambodia, Pax from Vietnam, and Zahara from Ethiopia. For Angelina Jolie, these 3 children were not just additions to her household, they were her salvation. They came into her life during her transition from Hollywood's wild child to a serious UN goodwill ambassador. As a result, the upbringing of the adopted siblings has always been heavily tethered to a sense of geopolitical duty and cultural preservation. Angelina's parenting philosophy for this group was strict. They must never forget where they came from. She hired specialized tutors, decorated their bedrooms with the flags of their birth countries, and frequently flew them back to their homelands. But this intense focus on their origins did something else. It forged them into a fiercely loyal, protective shield around their mother. Take Maddox, the eldest. Adopted in 2002, he has always been Angelina's confidant. In the American media narrative, Maddox is often portrayed as the man of the house post-divorce. His bond with Angelina is so absolute that it was a physical altercation between him and Brad Pitt on a private jet in 2016 that became the catalyst for the entire family's collapse. Pax and Zahara followed a similar trajectory. They were integrated into Angelina's global humanitarian brand. They traveled to refugee camps, attended international summits, and were shielded from Hollywood's shallowest temptations by being redirecting toward global awareness. Because they were rescued from extreme adversity, the adopted siblings seemed to possess a profound, innate sense of gratitude and duty to Angelina. In the ecosystem, they are the loyal guard. They are the ones who have completely dropped the Pitt from their names, standing shoulder to shoulder with the woman who flew them out of orphanages and into a life of unimaginable privilege. Now, contrast this with the biological siblings, Shiloh and the twins, Knox and Vivienne. If the adopted 3 represent survival and global consciousness, the biological 3 represent something entirely different to the American public: genetic perfection. From the moment Shiloh Nouvelle Jolie-Pitt was born in Namibia in 2006, her face was worth $4 million, the price People magazine paid for her first photos. The media obsessed over which parent she resembled more. Did she have Brad's jawline? Angelina's lips? This biological trio inherited a heavy, invisible crown. They didn't have a homeland to return to or a geopolitical identity to explore. Their identity was their parents. They were the physical manifestation of the most famous romance of the 21st century, Brangelina. For Shiloh, Knox, and Vivienne, the parenting dynamic was different. Brad Pitt, in particular, reportedly longed for a more traditional American upbringing for his biological kids. He wanted them to have roots, to experience the American Midwest where he grew up, and to keep them out of the hyper-politicized spotlight that Angelina preferred. But as the divorce turned toxic, this group faced a unique psychological crisis. How do you look in the mirror every day and see the faces of two people who are actively trying to destroy each other in court? Shiloh's journey, in particular, has fascinated the American public. From her early years of gender-bending fashion, which Angelina openly championed, to her recent legal move to officially drop Pitt from her surname on her 18th birthday, Shiloh has had to navigate her identity under an intense microscope. Unlike the adopted siblings who could retreat into their cultural heritage, the biological children have nowhere to hide. Their heritage is the very war zone they are trying to escape. Despite these vastly different origins, the six siblings share a highly unusual claustrophobic bond. In America, we often talk about the bubble, the insular world of the ultra-wealthy. But the Jolie-Pitt bubble is impenetrable. Because of their parents' fame, these children were largely homeschooled. They did not have normal schoolyards, sleepovers, or neighborhood friends. Their only true peers were each other. In this ecosystem, the common ground is survival. They survived the relentless chase of the paparazzi. They survived the global scrutiny of their family structure. And most painfully, they survived the public demolition of their parents' marriage. However, the divergence in their adult paths is becoming impossible to ignore. The adopted siblings have gravitated heavily toward creative independence and global enterprise. Maddox studied biochemistry in South Korea. Pax has quietly entered the art world under a pseudonym to avoid nepotism claims. And Zahara is attending Spelman College, a historically black liberal arts college in Atlanta, carving out her own identity within the Black American experience. They are outward-looking, building lives that extend far beyond the borders of Southern California. Meanwhile, the biological siblings are staying closer to the nest, yet showing signs of deep internal negotiation. Vivienne recently worked as a producer's assistant alongside Angelina on the Broadway show The Outsiders. Knox remains highly private, shielded by both parents. Shiloh is throwing herself into the dance world. The common thread? All six children are artistically inclined, fiercely private, and deeply distrustful of the media. But the way they process their trauma is split along the lines of their arrival. The adopted siblings have locked gates around Angelina, viewing Brad through a lens of alienation. The biological siblings, carrying the physical DNA of both, have had a much more complex, painful road to emotional independence. Ultimately, the Jolie-Pitt Sibling Ecosystem is a modern-day Greek tragedy played out in the hills of Los Feliz and the courts of Los Angeles. Angelina Jolie wanted to create a world where borders didn't exist, where a child from Cambodia and a child from Namibia could share the same breakfast table as equals, and in many ways she succeeded. The love and solidarity among these six siblings is undeniable. They have protected one another through a media storm that would have broken most families, but the experiment also revealed a deeper, more complicated truth about human nature, trauma, and identity. The adopted siblings found their strength in their rescue and their roots. The biological siblings are still trying to untangle their identities from the genetic masterpiece and disaster that was Brangelina. As they all enter their 20s, the world watches not to see if they will become famous, but to see if they will break the cycle. In the end, the true measure of the Jolie-Pitt ecosystem won't be the movies they make or the brands they build. It will be whether these 6 unique individuals can finally find peace in a world that has never allowed them to be just children. What do you think of the fascinating dynamic between the Jolie-Pitt siblings? Do you see a clear divide in how the adopted and biological children have navigated their parents' toxic divorce? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the cultural phenomena that shape our world. Until next time.